So as Deacon said, I'm Vicki Hatfield, and I'm one of the ones from St. Maximilian Kolbe Parish. I've been married to my husband Rodney for almost 34 years. We have 5 children, 4 of them here on earth and 1 of them in heaven. About a year ago, we were able to open up our home to another child who was close to suicide in his current home situation. So I have 4 teenagers at home, thus all the gray hair. I also have a 2-year-old granddaughter, Lily, and a dog named Tuck. We moved to Houston 3.5 years ago from Kansas City area. Go Chiefs. Deacon won't let me wear my Chiefs t-shirt. In Kansas, I was active in my church, attended a few retreats, an occasional Bible study, and some small group activities. My search for a Catholic community and a stronger faith led me to Cursillo. Thanks to Cursillo, my Catholic community grew like never before, and my faith grew to levels that at one time was unimaginable. Here in Houston, when St. Max offered the Watch Retreat, my desire for a Catholic community and strong faith led me to attend. Early in the first morning of the Watch Retreat, when they were going over the agenda, and I heard how closely it was developed from Cursillo, I felt like I was home. So far, you've heard Mitch witness on the laity. As he said, who are the church?
We are.
You also heard Deacon Denny witness on sanctifying grace, or the call to be Christian. Mickey gave us his witness on piety, and that's the call to direct all of our life to God. And most recently, Jeff witnessed to us on how to study. My Bible is my favorite coloring book. As we've talked about over and over again, Christianity has these 3 distinct elements: piety, study, and action. Like a tripod, they all come together. The stool cannot stand with only 2 legs. Piety empowers us to love and to attract others to do likewise. Piety is the base from which action is launched, the foundation from which it begins. Study helps us to establish a better relationship with God and understand His will for us. Study is the aim. Jeff talked about this with the dartboard. The aim of the action is like a recipe is the aim of a delicious dessert, which I have had many of. Action is an expression of our desire to share God's love. We are not trying to act like Christians, but our being Christian must lead to Christian action. In general, action is exercising power. To walk, to move a chair from where it stands, we exercise our physical power. To study for a test, we exercise our intellectual power. Apostolic action is the exercising of the power of love. And some of you may be old enough to know the Huey Lewis and the News song, Power of Love. Are you able to play it real quick? Oh, okay. And this is the love of God, the love of neighbor. It centers on that Christian love, the giving of yourself to another with the purpose of helping that other person grow closer to God. Apostolic action is directed at influencing someone's attitude to change from secular to Christian. Once I was talking to a coworker about a storm which had passed through the area in the middle of the night before. I mentioned that I was in the Adoration Chapel during the storm, and the lightning coming through the stained glass window was amazing. He responded, "I knew it!" And then he went on to explain, "I was talking to my wife about how nice you were, and that it reminded me of the nuns at our daughter's college. I knew you were Catholic." That opened a door to many conversations between us about God. His wife had left the Catholic Church, and he was never very religious. When our motivations for action are elevated and empowered by grace, the spreading of God's kingdom, our acts become apostolic. The kindness my coworkers saw was only possible through God's grace. To help explain this a little further, let me distinguish between human, Christian, and apostolic actions. Human actions are motivated by friendship, brotherhood, neighborliness. Christian actions are just doing Christian things. Anybody can do those. Apostolic action is both an expression and a consequence of our love for God, a realization that we were sent to love our neighbor. Any ideas? I don't think the life coach went over these. Any ideas how many times in the Bible it says to love your neighbor? Any guesses? 20? No. 8. Only missed it by a few. The most popular is probably found in Matthew chapter 23, verses 37 to 39, when Jesus is telling the scholar which commandment in the law is the greatest. If you turn to page 1099 in your Bible, you can read along with me. That's page 1099. Matthew chapter 22, starting at verse 37 through verse 39. He said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself." Our action, by God's design, is tied into his plan for salvation. In Acts chapter 16, verses 25 through 40, you can turn to page 1236. I'm not going to read all of it, it's too long. But on page 1236, Paul and Silas were prisoners. While in prison, they sang hymns to God and prayed. They did not go anywhere when an earthquake struck and all their chains were pulled loose. The apostolic action helped convert the prison guard. They not only then baptized that prison guard, but his entire family. Again, you can read the details yourself in Acts 16, verses 25 through 40, on page 1236. Action by itself is an all-encompassing term, or should I say confusing term. Kind of like the linguistics they talked about. Action can mean all kinds of things. It can include specific actions we take to help others, such as serving food, donating time, talent, and treasures. It may be a Christian act, like teaching our Sunday school that we call CCE, or maybe it's lecturing at Mass, or helping with the music ministry. But the focus of the action is the context on the part of this retreat, and it is all with the added thrust of apostolic action. Why are we doing it? Those actions we plan and implement as instruments of the Lord to bring someone or a group of people closer to Christ. It is well beyond human actions and Christian actions. It is an integral part of the concept of action and the transformation of all of society. For me, human action would be working the concession stand at my daughter's theater performances or the bake sale at my son's bowling tournaments. Christian action for me would be working with the Houston Coalition on their Walk for Life. Apostolic action, our participation in retreats like this one and Watch at St. Max. In other words, I'm here to bring you closer to Christ. I'm not just here for the food. Being Christian without some apostolic action is equal to not being Christian at all. In order to have an apostolate, one needs to be an apostle. We need to walk the talk. We are God's ambassadors, representing God to our neighbors for the purpose of demonstrating his love. Apostolic action also goes beyond Christian actions with doing Christian things. Like I said, my example of working with the Houston Coalition's Walk for Life is somewhat out of a sense of what God calls us to do because we feel that compassion for others. In this case, the unborn and their parents. Don't get me wrong, I truly want to help them. But it is great action, but it is just Christian action. What we mean by apostolic action is taking our Christian actions a step further. I provide a ride to Mass and other church functions for a friend who cannot drive because I realize she might not grow in her faith if she is cut off from those things. It also becomes apostolic when we become instruments of the Lord bringing the good news as well. She is aware of my love for Christ because of the many things we've shared, and our discussion in the cars help us both become aware of Christ in our lives. During these times, it is apostolic action. Jesus did many miracles. We saw some of them up here. He cured the sick, the blind, he raised the dead, and beyond that, Jesus was more concerned about the spiritual life of the people. He spent more time preaching. He was always preaching to the people and to the disciples. To feed the hungry is good. To clothe the naked is good. But if we forget to introduce them to Christ, we forget that punchline. We only have half the gospel if we do it that way. We miss the most vital part to our mission from Christ and the most vital life of the person that you are interacting with. We cannot consider our actions to be apostolic if all we do is be kind and considerate towards our neighbors. A non-Christian and non-believer can perform good deeds and act in a civil manner. We need to bring Christ along all the time. What makes this love, this authentic apostolic action? St. Paul describes Christian life when he writes to the Corinthians in the first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 13, verses 1 through 3. You can find this on page 1285. 1285. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 1 to 3. If I speak in human and angelic tongues, but do not have love, I am a resounding gong or a clashing cymbal. And if I have the gift of prophecy powers and comprehend all mysteries and knowledge, if I have all faith so as to move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away everything I own, and if I hand my body over so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. We are being called to a personal conversion marked by a fundamental change in the direction of our lives in all our relationships. Love is more than showing affection or simply emotional expression or giving gifts. It is more than the manipulation of others, even under the disguise of helping them. Love is having the attitude of Christ towards another person. Our task is to discover God's will for us so that all we do at all times will make God's love real to the world. Every action flows from two conditions. My encounter with Christ, is it self-giving or self-centered? And my encounter with my brothers and sisters. It is united by Christ, by grace, motivated by the love of God and others. The will of God, our place of action, our place in His plan, is defined by our personal way of life. Apostolic is necessary as a motivation, a feeling you remember, and an expression of grace. Our action is also necessary to communicate Christ to those we interact with. Sometimes we may even use words. There are 3 points of view that our apostolic action comes from. First of all, it is internal and vital for us. We are the power of Christianity, and all that power demands action. A necessity, since the characteristics of one's life are reinforced, developed, strengthened, and perfected by a means of action. Where there is no action, there is no life. If the heart is not pumping, there is no life. If the lungs are not working, soon there is no life. If the muscles are not used, soon they will wither. Being Christian is to live the life of grace 24 hours a day. Action is not a hobby. It is a vocation as lay people. All of our power is nothing if not in apostolic action. A parked car goes nowhere. We are part of the Christianity which leads the attack, and we cannot know rest. Pope Pius XII said, always maintain a spirit of conquest, but make sure it's the right conquest. As we've said, we are the church. We are the branches, and Christ is the vine. Christ willed the branches to bear fruit, as you've already heard, to be alive and to produce. Secondly, my apostolic action is also external and vital for others. The world suffers from corruption, if you didn't notice. We need to be apostles of today, living in grace, hand in hand with our brothers and sisters to conquer everyone for Christ. God works through persons to bring others to Him. Are you ready to be that person? Christians exercising apostolic action are God's people, His apostles for the Christianization of the world. He has put many persons in our path, maybe our spouse, our parents, our friends, other family members. How many of them have we tried to bring to Christ? I'm not even great at that answer. St. Paul told the first Christians, the hour to awake is now. Pope John Paul II told us, we are in need of a new evangelization. Have any of you seen the movie Jesus Resolution? Is it available to you? Okay, I saw a couple hands go up. Jesus Resolution? Revolution? If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend that you do. And then, pray with me that a new Jesus revolution is brewing somewhere here today, and that we become a part of it. The moment has arrived to come out of our routine and our daily living to seek others with that spirit of conquest. God does not reward laziness. We must seek out people where they are, so nobody can complain about not knowing the happiness of the life of grace. If we do not win them over, they will overtake us. My apostolic action is essential in the church because without action, without the action of each baptized person, the church would not be able to carry out the mission which God entrusted to us by Christ. For the church needs our witnesses. It needs our action. Only in the life of grace has that apostolic action, and our life becomes a witness of the church. We can attain it. What is intended, we can attain to save souls and, as I said, transform the world. There are elements to apostolic action. Please don't be alarmed by what I just said. Hopefully we won't all come across as holy rollers doing this. We don't need to be in everybody's face about it. So how do we apply apostolic action gracefully? It can be effective if we apply certain elements. The head, the will, the arms, and the knees, all informed by the heart, a heart filled with love. Head, my action will be performed by making use of my intelligence, my planning, and knowing what I am doing, after giving it careful thought and reflection. As laypersons, Each one of us has a mission to personify Christ in all the circumstances of our lives, like I did with my coworker. We need to take advantage of the moment's grace, but the Christian must learn to be sensitive to the moments when they arise, for as they often are subtle, kind of like the devil, but these are the good ones. And the Christian must learn to make the moments happen by what they say, act, and do. What we propose is more than just saving souls. We propose to give Christianity some backbone, which is the only way of saving our world. The building of love through friendship. It's not accidental, but the result of time and effort to know and understand other people. The will. My action will be performed in line with a well-formed judgment. It is simply the decision of doing what I intended on doing. Not looking at God and saying, No, doing His will. Arms. The arms are simply the human part of our action. It's not just the hugging and stuff, but all of the actual doing what we propose. The action would be performed with diligence. If I just think, plan, and make the decision to do an action, then for any given reason I don't execute it, I have just wasted some very precious time and missed an opportunity to build the kingdom. Knees. That's your prayer and sacrifice. Get on your knees. My action will be performed with perfect reliance on the power of God, realizing that God can accomplish miracles through me and you, which I, in my weakness, cannot even attempt. Amanda is an example of this. I will praise and ask Jesus to work with me. I need to get Christ involved in all my situations. It is Christ who brings success. If you turn to page 1205, 1205, John 15:5 says, "Without me, you can do nothing." I need to get others to pray and sacrifice for my intentions and situations as I would do for them. I came in this morning and asked my table to pray for a friend who needs it. All of these, like I said, are informed by your heart of love. And then there are 6 qualities to action. They are rational. We need to bring in our intelligence. We need to think and plan our actions. Give them time. Don't just react off the cuff or from the gut. We need to be resolute, bold, not like a bulldozer, just confidently. Love is an act of the will and is not dependent on your emotions. We need to be enthusiastic, which is tough for this crowd this late in the afternoon after you all just been up and moving around. But if we lack enthusiasm for what we believe and for what we says fulfills our expectations, how can anybody else be attracted to what we believe? Others will not be attracted to us and ultimately not attracted to Jesus if we are insincere, depressed, or always negative. God fills our heart with joy, and we must show it. We must let other people see this joy and enthusiasm for His work. It must be constant. It is this never-ending desire, not just a one-time hit-or-miss approach. Oh, I spoke to them about Jesus once and they didn't do anything, so done. No, it doesn't work that way. Apostolic is not easy. It requires self-sacrifice and effort. Imagine what would have happened if the person responsible for you being here at this retreat had given up an hour before you agreed to attend. Don't give up. Christians must never become discouraged, for they should know that God rewards their actions 100-fold, 1,000-fold, even bigger. It must be supernatural, always trusting in God. This is the quality which enables everything to happen. We must always remember, speak to God about our friend before speaking to our friend about God. And it must be apostolic. Everything we do is for the Lord, not for our own glory, but for the glory of the Lord. So that our apostolic is effective, we need to apply the best method that we know. And this involves 3 steps. Make a friend, be a friend, bring a friend to Christ. And they need to be done in that order. Make a friend. Might be the easiest step. We can't expect them to look for you. You need to go looking for them. And all it takes is the will to make that first step. That first introduction maybe to the person who's new to the unit, or a person who you desire to be a friend, or a person who you see might be seeking something more than what they have today. A lot of times, the other person is just waiting to be asked. Then you need to be a friend. This is probably pretty hard. It takes time. In order to be a true friend, we must have a genuine interest in the other person. We must take the time to get to know him and his likes and dislikes. Be interested in them and think of them and their needs before your own. Love them spiritually as God loves us. It is important that we be authentic, honest, and sincere when we share our lives with them. There is no gain in making something appear true when it is not. It can only shatter the relationship when the truth becomes known. We've probably all seen that. Bring a friend to Christ. This is the final step. It is important for all of us to remember that it is accomplished only when done for Christ, with Christ, in Christ, and like Christ. Here's an example of this method in my own life. I met one of my best friends, Amanda, not this one, though she could be there, at a Bible study. A lot of the group already knew each other, and we were kind of the 2 outsiders. So it made sense that we quickly became friends. Over the years, our friendship grew. But it wasn't your normal friendship. We didn't talk very often or do a lot of things together. But both of us knew where to go when we needed that support and to share life's ups and downs. When we met, we both had one child. I had a daughter, and she had a son a couple years younger. We celebrated together when I had another daughter, and she had another son. Then I had another daughter. She had another son. Still, we didn't get together very often because our families were growing and we were busy going in different directions. But we both considered each other a sister in Christ, which is another way of saying that deep friendship. Finally, I had a son, and she got another dog. We did get together occasionally over the holidays, and our husbands got along very well too. But our friendship did not need that constant communication. It would pick up right where we left off, no matter how many months we went in between communication. And she always said she knew she could call me and I would give her the clothes off my back and the shoes off my feet if that is what she needed. I should also mention her husband was not Catholic. He supported her and the boys in their faith, even attended Mass with them when he was not traveling for work. And she liked to go to 8 a.m. Mass each week. I was not getting up early enough to get my whole family ready for 8 a.m. Mass, so she's a saint in my book. Fast forward to 2020 and COVID. Her husband lost his job. He went months without a job. It had to be hard on them. They supported us when we moved to Houston, and we would send them money occasionally because I knew how hard it had to be feeding 3 teenage boys without his full income. Her husband would frequently comment that he didn't understand our friendship. To him, a special friendship could not last without many frequent times together, and our infrequency just didn't make sense to him. She called me one time in late 2020 to share some great news. Because her husband was not traveling for work, he was able to make the commitment and attend RCIA. In Easter of 2021, he joined the Catholic Church. One evening after our CIA class, he came home and told her that he finally understood our friendship. It was so rooted in the love of God that we were able to love each other and each other's families without a lot of time spent together. We knew, and he now knows, we were communicating to each other through our prayers for each other, to God, and we were praying to each other together. This included my prayers that he would join the church, which came true. He now sees our friendship as so special and so deep in God's love that he wanted what we have, a love of God and a love of not so close of a neighbor. Please stand for the closing prayer.